All right. For those of you that watched our first video, thanks for coming back to watch our next video. I'm Clay Norman, also known as Pliglet number 33. I'm here with my mom, Jenny Thompson, who's here to share a little bit more about her story and being brought up in a polygamous community.
Hi, it's nice to meet you all. Good morning, son.
Good morning. All right. So I think a good place to start and pick up from where we left off and also to continue forward is giving everybody an idea, more of a view of our own family, our family tree. How many, I've got asked questions like how many wives are there? How many kids are there total? Things like that.
Okay. Um, I am married to a man who has had 6 wives. One passed away, and one is no longer in the relationship, but we are still good friends.
Mhm.
We all together have 50 children. Some of those are born naturally, and some came in with other wives that had already had children previously. So don't know how much more information. I am the fourth wife.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I think that was a good question that was asked. So good filling in the gap there. People also, and I was also curious, because you were brought up and raised in a polygamous community, and that was basically all you knew all growing up. So I think people want to know a little bit more about if you had to kind of describe what it was like growing up in a polygamous community for yourself to somebody that had never been in it before, kind of give it a good brief summary of what it was like growing up in that.
for me, growing up in the polygamous lifestyle was actually a positive thing. I had all my best friends were my brothers and sisters. We played a lot of night games, and we got together quite often. I had one mother that was really amazing at setting up family gatherings. She really pushed those, and that's what kept us together as a family. She would go out and play night games with us and set up dodgeball, all that. So we did stuff like that all the time. Kick the can was a big thing. Loved all the kinds of family dinners, um, especially since my one mother, I was very close with her. I loved to hang out at her house, and she would set up all these family dinners. Even though sometimes the other wives struggled with it, she still pushed it through. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that our family is as close as they are. Um, so that's basically my growing up days. As far as being a kid, it was mostly positive. Now, I did go through times in my life where I struggled. I felt like that my dad favored certain kids and certain mothers over other mothers. So I don't know how much more in detail. There was other situations where I felt like, with one wife, I felt like he favored her and her kids, and she had had a baby that had passed away. And you have to understand, a lot of times when a family loses a baby, a husband and wife, those situations are very, very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes a lot of work to work through that relationship. Even in situations in monogamy, a lot of times when you lose a child, they end up in divorce. So if you understand all that dynamic, then you start to realize, okay, here's a situation where me as a child looked at that and said, my dad favors her and her kids. And especially since I had a brother that was about my same age, and I felt like that he got away with everything and it wasn't fair, but he was born soon after they had lost that child. So I felt like in my own mind that they were favored. And yet, looking at it as an adult, I'm looking back going, they must have been really working on that relationship. And I viewed it from a child's view as favoritism. Does that, I hope I covered that enough for people to kind of understand that.
Yeah, I think so. Um, so let's jump back a little bit, if that's okay. I
Yeah.
think so. Growing up in a polygamous family, it sounds like some of the best parts of it was siblings, and it wasn't just your direct mother's siblings. It was all the siblings of the community. It was all the brothers and sisters. Everybody was so tight knit, and it was a really close community where you don't really get to experience that in other places, probably other than maybe a close team or something like that, where
Right.
maybe you don't share family totally, but you feel like family.
So I had situations where like my sisters would always get together and they would have sisters dinners and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And they were all my older sisters. And then when you got to a certain age, you could be a part of the older sisters. I didn't ever really care about being part of the older sisters. I kind of had the attitude that I was going to go to hell anyway. Just knew that growing up that I was
Yeah,
going to go to hell, but
yeah,
it was my little secret. I didn't want to tell everybody else that I wasn't good enough.
yeah.
So I kind of kept that to myself. And then when they wanted me to be a part of the sisters' dinners, I was like, I don't really care. I mean, it wasn't a big deal to me. I
Uh-huh.
went, but I don't know. It just wasn't something I really cared about. I didn't really feel like I was a part of my sisters. I am a part of my sisters now.
Yeah.
I really enjoy my sisters. I love them all, and we've gotten
Uh-huh.
really close over the years.
I would say because we had something like that too. We had man's camp, right? So once
Mhm.
you're at a certain age, then you can go off to man's camp that comes around once a year. And you get to be one of the boys, right? And I think those are amazing. They're fantastic. They're bonding. They're great. But I think if you are not one of the people that's pushing into them and being a part of them, sometimes you can look at them more as like a fraternity
Yeah,
or something like that. And you're either into something like that or you're not.
right. Yeah, and each person has to choose for themselves where they are and how much they want to be a part of something or not, because we're individuals
Yeah.
and you don't have to fit someplace to be who you are or to be accepted. You need
Yeah.
to own where you are and who you are in the place that you are.
Yeah.
Because
I'd agree.
until you take on that responsibility of this is who I am and I stand strong in who I am, then you can walk anywhere you want in life and be accepted. But if you feel like I have to be in this group to be accepted, then you're never going to measure up. You're never going to be accepted because you feel like acceptance is whatever you've created in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. You're never going to get full acceptance the way you're looking for it, except for from yourself.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Like, I don't care how you're looking for it, where you're looking for it. You probably won't get the acceptance you're truly looking for unless it's from yourself.
Yeah. And I had to learn that for myself. I had to learn that I am only accepted when I can actually learn to accept myself and really like myself.
Mhm.
I have to just look at myself in the mirror and say, hey, you're pretty cool, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to absolutely love yourself and get behind yourself in that for sure. Um, so there was a lot of family get-togethers, and I'm sure those can feel chaotic at times.
Oh, yes.
What would you say is probably your favorite part about growing up in a community like that? Like, if you were to single it out, what was the best thing?
I feel like that was the best part of my life is just really bonding with my brothers and sisters.
Yeah. If I were to pinpoint it, it would single it down to the word community. Really,
Mhm.
the feeling of community and that you were bonding in community, and just the presence of it all.
Mhm.
I can understand that. I think that's why a lot of people get into church groups and all that stuff. And just once they get in and they start feeling like part of the community, it's intoxicating.
Yeah.
I think,
You feel accepted.
yeah, I think everybody wants to feel like they're part of that, part of a community or something like that, part of something. And so
Right.
when you find something that you feel like you belong to,
Yeah, I think that sometimes the dangers that come in is when you want to feel accepted because you feel unaccepted by yourself, and then you find yourself in a situation that is not healthy for you, whether
yeah,
that be in a situation where there's drugs involved, or whether that's a situation where you've given up your freedom.
yeah,
So I think that's really important to look at the community and the lifestyle that you're drawn
yeah.
to feel accepted.
I think there's a healthy balance there. So I think if you don't feel like you can accept yourself outside of the community and without the community, then it's probably not very healthy, a very healthy relationship that you have into the community itself in relation to you as
Right.
yourself.
Yeah, I don't think you should be identified by your community.
Yeah, because once you lose that self identity and you're just community, it's kind of a cult at that
Yeah.
point.
I
That's
think it's
that's where you lose it.
really, really important to make sure that you identify yourself and who you are
Yes.
as a person, and then the community that you're in just enhances you as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree full fledged to that. Yep. So you talked a little bit about, as I would call it, perceived favoritism. You felt like your dad kind of had a favorite wife, a favorite family that he niched in with and stuff like that. So how, I don't feel like it's necessarily real. So like in our own family, there's a lot of times where I view different moms as dad's favorite. And so it, all growing up, all I thought was that they're the favorite mom, and then you can obviously see that all their kids get a lot more attention and stuff like that. In that perspective, you focus on that stuff, and I can see all the attention that their kids are getting, or all the things that their kids get to do with dad, and it like it looks like from any perspective, if you're doing that, that they're the favorite. But as I became an adult and I actually looked back at it, it's relationship based. It's, I don't know, maybe their relationship was strong, and then the kids bonded with dad in different ways to where just they clicked better at the time,
Mhm.
and dad felt more welcome by them, and so it just was easier to spend more time with them. I don't know, like different things like that, because if I'm over there just viewing as they're the favorite, they're the favorite, they're the favorite, I can only imagine what kind of energy that I'm putting off to dad when he comes over to give us his time and energy, if I'm feeling like I'm just not a favorite.
Right. And a lot of that does have to do with relationship. Even with myself, I was very protective of my kids. So I didn't allow your dad a lot of times to bond with my kids because it's not that I was threatened by him,
Hmm.
it's that I separated our relationship. These kids are mine, and then he would have to work really hard to say they're ours, you
Hmm.
know, and it's just because I was a protective mother. I was
Yeah.
a mother bear, and it wasn't just with him. I was very much about certain mothers I knew I could hand my kids over to, and that they would take as good care, if not better than the care that I could give my kids. And other mothers I didn't have that trust with. So a lot of it ends up with relationship, even with other mothers, and even with him. If my relationship with him was not good at that moment, or we were not getting along, then he would try to interact with the kids to soften my heart. And that that sometimes would, but in other ways, my if we weren't getting along, I'm like, you're not touching my kids, and I would pull the kids away from him. So you can see in that dynamic how that would cause there to be where you could have felt like that relationship, that he couldn't favor you when there's that rift between the two of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to own that responsibility.
Yeah. I get that. Um, so I don't feel like you ever really get to understand your parents' relationships, your relationships with your parents, all that stuff until you get older and really get to view your parents not necessarily as your parents, but as people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can really sit there for a moment and step out maybe outside the story and just see it for what it was. And if you are in a mind space where you actually just want to be closer, you're in that, I don't know, free mindset to just analyze it and love the person for who they are. Like, we're not all perfect, but I think that dad loves me more than I ever knew, obviously, and will ever understand. And maybe that more than he'll ever get the opportunity to express.
When you bring up that point, that really brings up something for me, and that is I blamed my parents for a lot of my hurts.
Mm-hmm.
I blamed my parents for a lot of my struggles growing up. Looking back on that now, I can't blame my parents for my struggles. My struggles are mine. And I can look at my parents and I can say, you went and did this and you did that and you put up with this and you put up with that. And I can point the finger all I want.
Mm-hmm.
Their relationship and what they went through is theirs.
Yeah.
Okay. What I go through in my life and what I do is mine. I am 100% responsible for my relationships. And that's the only thing I have control over. So if that's the only thing I have control over, if I'm constantly blaming my parents for my hurts,
Yeah.
I'm not growing. I'm not taking responsibility for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm giving my power away.
Yeah. And you're only responsible for your side of the relationship. Relationships, I mean, if you look at it, it looks like 50-50, but it's not 50-50, it's 100-100. And so you can only control your side of it 100%.
Exactly. And when my mom passed, I was very grateful that I was able to build a relationship with her, because I didn't have the very best relationship with my mom because I held resentments towards her.
Yeah.
That I blamed her for stuff. And you know what? My mom did the very best she knew how to do as a mother. And she raised a lot of really amazing kids. And she is not my problem. My problem is me.
Yeah. With growing up in a, doesn't necessarily mean growing up in a polygamous community, but I think growing up in general, you pick up a lot of unhealthy perspectives, unhealthy beliefs, unhealthy views. You kind of form this world around you, which can restrict you as an adult.
Yes.
So, what do you think in relation to the polygamous community? Because I'm curious about that. What do you think was probably the biggest bullshit, the biggest thing that they had you believe, or the biggest thing you believed that you had to destroy and kind of relearn as an adult?
I had to go to rock bottom for myself and ask myself, what do I really believe? I was taught that, God, God will love you if you do everything right and do everything perfect. And I had to realize that's not my God. Okay. My God loves me for who I am. He created me. So if I'm created in the likeness that I am, then I must be perfect just the way I am, with all my weaknesses, with all my flaws
Yeah.
in there, and question our beliefs. Because if we don't
Mhm.
question our beliefs and what we think, and question our stories of what we grew up with, then we don't grow. And I feel like a lot of us just go through life in the motions and never question our thoughts, never question our beliefs, never question who we really are.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is a huge thing in my life that I had to learn, is to question everything.
Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. Now that people have gotten an idea of where we sit within our own family, I think diving back chronological order, let's kind of just pick up, where do you sit within your family? What number were you? Where were you born?
I have no freaking idea.
I
I
meant,
don't.
I meant from your mom.
Oh, oh yeah. I am the fifth child of 11.
Okay.
So my
Fifth
mom
child
had,
of 11.
yep, my mom had 11 children,
Mhm.
6 boys and 5 girls.
Mhm. And you were born on Thanksgiving Day.
Yes, I was. I was born on Thanksgiving Day. My mom didn't have to wash dishes or prepare the meal that day. So, I was a big blessing that day. And we all gave thanks, I'm
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
As a child, I didn't always feel that way. I did not like pumpkin pie. And so every time my birthday came around, my mom made pumpkin pie. I mean, a lot of pumpkin pie. She would make enough for the entire family. And I hated pumpkin pie. I think maybe it was because that's what they put a candle in every year. I didn't always feel special for my birthday, because every birthday my mom put candles in the pumpkin pie and the whole family sung happy birthday to me, and I had to sit on the stage of the happy birthday. Um, I didn't really change my birthday. And one day I found out that, you know what? Thanksgiving falls on a different day every year. And I still celebrated my birthday on Thanksgiving.
That's fun.
So,
You are just a big blessing. That's all.
yeah,
To be
every,
celebrated.
yeah, everybody had to celebrate that I was born every Thanksgiving, whether that was my real birthday or not.
And so 5 out of 11. That's a lot of kids.
Yep.
So what was it like growing up numero 5 out of 11? That's like smack dab in the middle.
Well, it's not smack dab in the middle.
Pretty close.
So when I was smack dab in the middle, where I was, when my mom just had 10 kids, I had middle child syndrome. I was the middle child. That means I was picked on. I knew that my older sister was the favorite sister. I'm the second to the oldest daughter. And I just felt like that she was the favorite sister, and I couldn't do anything right. I liked to clean the house and make sure everything was nice, and that's what I did. But I felt picked on because I was the middle child. Then one day I had a little brother, and he was my little baby. I was so excited when he was born, and I just kind of took him under my wing as my little boy. And I was no longer the middle child. So I passed that baton down to my younger sister just under me, and she got to wear the crown
Uh,
of the middle child.
middle child crown.
Yeah.
I don't think most any middle child will view that as a crown.
Well, you can view it as a crown, or you can view it as a dunce hat. Which one do you want?
Dunn's hat. That's probably what I view it as. Jester's hat. I relate very harshly to that.
Yeah, so that's where I fit in. Okay.
So a little bit of the relationship with your siblings, it sounds like you felt like the oldest daughter was the favorite,
Yeah,
and then you kind of took like mothership views of the youngest son.
I did. I took care of my younger brothers and sisters a lot.
Mhm.
Became my mom's number one babysitter. In fact, in the polygamous group I was in, I actually became the babysitter. When somebody needed a babysitter, I was known to go to get your kids babysat. So
Okay.
if there was anything that happened that was big, like a Relief Society thing or whatever, a lot of the women would bring me their children. And a lot of times I had more children than I should have to handle,
Yeah.
but I didn't know how to say no. I
Mm.
can't take your child. And sometimes there would be situations where they would just, here's my kids. And I'm like, oh, well, I didn't know I was tending.
It was
And
almost like just an expectation, almost like an obligation.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. I gotcha. So you talked a little bit about how you felt like your oldest sister was your mom's favorite. What was the relationship like between you and your mom?
Um, my relationship with my mom wasn't that great of a relationship. It wasn't like we had a bad relationship. We didn't fight.
Yeah.
But in the background of my own mind, I just really knew that I was not her favorite child. I knew that I was a disappointment.
Yeah.
That's kind of the story I took on. And the only way I was going to be accepted is if I could help out in any way I could, which I did. You know, I helped out with the household or whatever. But I just, it was mostly just that I didn't feel accepted by my mom.
Yeah. Didn't really feel embraced for you.
Yeah, I just felt like, well, let me give you one scenario. So one time when I was younger, um, everybody got to go to Montana. And I was all excited because in my mind, I had decided I was going to go on this next trip to Montana because I was the next oldest.
Yeah.
So I had decided in my head that I was going. And then my mom came and approached me and let me know that she was taking my younger sister rather than me, and I was going to stay home and tend. And I was pretty upset. I was like, that's not fair. I should be going.
Yeah.
So I let her know that that wasn't fair. I'm sure I didn't do it in a nice way, but I said it should be my turn to go. And my mom basically just said, I need you to take care of the kids, and you don't get to act like this. So you're going to stay home and take care of the kids, and you're going to be happy about it. And she wasn't mean about it. It was just that I took on the attitude of, I knew, but that just was one more proof that I didn't matter,
Mm.
you know.
Okay. What was the relationship like between you, your mom and dad?
From my perspective, my mom's and dad's relationship was stressful.
Okay.
It was, I I got along with my dad, although I did take on some resentments with my dad, just because that's what you do when you see that your parents don't have a good relationship. You start to say it's his fault or it's her fault or whatever. So I did have positive interactions with my dad, a lot of them. My dad was very patient in a lot of ways. One time he sat in a chair and he let us girls, he played like he was asleep. So we thought he was asleep. And us girls dressed him up in a nightgown and we giggled the whole time. And he let us, and we put curlers in his hair. And we thought it was so funny because he was just going to sit there and we knew he was asleep. Come to find out years later, he knew the whole time what we were doing and was giggling at us
Yeah.
because we thought we were so clever, and he was going to wake up and find out he was dressed up as a girl.
So, see, you had like it seems like a good relationship with your dad in a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways, as I got older, I became very angry with my dad. Um, I got pulled into some situations that I should not have been involved in. My mom did tell me a little bit about their struggles in their relationships, which affected me as a
Okay.
child. I don't believe that any child should be brought into their parents' relationship.
Mhm. Gotcha. And so, when did you start going to school, like public
Um,
school?
well, when I was younger, I obviously went to a private school. And then when I was in elementary, I believe it was I can't remember if it was the fourth grade I started into elementary. So I did not get along in school very well. I was very shy, very backwards, basically. And so I didn't have a lot of friends when I first went to school, and I struggled to learn. I wasn't learning to read very well. And when I got in there, then I found out that I had dyslexia. So they put me in the special education class. Now, in this class at the time, and not to be offensive, but this is what we called it the handicap class.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's where all the kids with special needs went. And that's where I went to learn how to read. The class itself, the teacher was really good, but then that just made my situation worse because not only was I a shy kid and having a hard time integrating with all these kids that weren't of the same religion and faith I was, but I was now in a special ed class. So the kids began to tease me, and I really struggled with that. Getting, they got called retard and whatever else. So, that wasn't a real positive experience for me
Yeah.
going to school. And so it was that way on in through the sixth grade and then I went into junior high. And when I got to junior high, things got a lot rougher for me. I didn't get along. I had a situation where I had one girl that said, "Hey, you're from Happiness Hill," is what they called it, where we lived, and that was where my family lived. So she said, "Meet me behind the school and I'll beat you up." And I did not take the invitation. First of all, I would have missed the bus, and then that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
And second of all, she was a lot bigger than me, and I really didn't want my face beat in, and we didn't have money for the doctors anyway. So I didn't take her up on her invitation, although it was very kind of her to invite me. I
Yeah.
did not go.
Yeah.
So that was one situation. I would walk down the halls in school and I would get shoved into lockers. Just kids would push me and call me plague. So that was really challenging for me. I had another situation where at one point while I was in junior high, I went into the restroom and a couple of the boys came into the girls' restroom, and they were not being kind with me, and they shoved me into one of the bathroom stalls. And luckily, one of the other teachers came in time to save my little hide. And she pulled the boys out and pulled me out and took me to the nurse's room. So I sat in the nurse's room while they called my mom. And I remember just being humiliated because here I am sitting on this in the sick room, which we called it, and knowing that my mom was going to come to the school to get me. And my mom pulls up to the school in my brother's big, bright red Trans Am. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was humiliated at that car because was so bright. And then she gets out of the car and she's in her polyester pants and her peach stained shirt, and it was a man's shirt that she had put elastic on the wrists. And that picture sticks out in my head pretty clear when she's walking up the stairs and me going, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed. So she came up and went into the principal's office and he talked to her for a little bit. I have no idea what was talked about or anything. And then she came out and I was standing there. I felt like I was in trouble, not understanding really what I might have been in trouble for, but I felt like that everything was my fault.
Yeah.
So she said, let's go. So hopped in the car and it was quiet at first when we got in there. And then my mom just turned to me and she said, you need to be careful about drawing attention to yourself.
Mhm.
And I knew at that point that everything was my fault. I'm sorry, that puts a little bit of
You're okay.
tears still in my eyes because it was a traumatic situation. And we got home.
Real quick.
And,
Let's,
uh-huh.
so you said that's when you realized it was your fault. That right there is one of those things where you kind of take on an unhealthy perspective as a
Correct.
child and
Yes.
believe, because
Yes.
it wasn't your fault by any means. You didn't cause any of it. I think the only thing you felt guilty of is that you felt like you brought kind of attention and light, drew attention to you, your family, and all that stuff, which you were taught not to.
Right.
But none of it was even your fault. You didn't do it.
You're absolutely right. And it's silly that as old as I am now, that I can still go back and feel that emotion.
Yeah.
Because now that even though I'm not living that, I can still go back and feel that emotion.
For sure. And that just means that there's still some more stuff for you to work through in that area for you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know there is. And that's what's so cool about life is you get to keep working through it until, you see the blessings in it.
Yep, for sure. Did you make any friends in school? Was it anybody something that you'd be like they were a friend?
Well, yeah, I did. I made a couple of friends. I had one girl that she was really, really heavy, and so nobody was her friend. And so she was my friend. And we were friends.
Friends by outcast, the losers.
Yes. And people were mean to her because she was overweight. But she was actually really sweet. She was very kind to me. She knew that I was from a polygamous family and she was nice to me, but neither one of us had any friends. So we stuck together.
Yeah.
And her mom set up a really nice birthday party for her. And she invited quite a few people at school. And I was the only person that showed up.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
But
so
okay. So I know you didn't graduate necessarily on your first time through. So what grade did you drop out per se?
So after that incident at the school, when my mom took me home, when I got home, my mom was really sweet. I think she didn't know how to handle the situation.
Yeah.
So she just had me come in and we got back to doing fruit and stuff. And it was a very positive experience once I was home and it was safe. But she really didn't know how to handle the situation. So at that point, I decided I wasn't gonna go to school anymore. Okay. So I would hop on the bus and I would go to school and get off the bus. And then I would go down to the park and hide under the park bench. And then once school started, then sometimes I would walk down the streets and go to the candy shop and buy a couple of candies or something. And sometimes they would say, shouldn't you be in school? And I'd be like, oh, it's break. And then I'd go back and think, I could get caught, you know. And then later I just decided I'm just going to ride to the bus to school. And then I just decided to walk home. Now it was about 5 miles to walk home from school. So it wasn't like any little walk,
Mhm.
but I would just walk out, turn around and walk all the way home. I wasn't going to stay at school. Then I finally got smarter. Now, this is when the intelligent really stepped in for me. And I would go to the bus stop and I'd watch my mom drive off to work. And then I would walk down to the Jordan River and wait there until the bus left. And then I'd just go home, spend my day at home and clean the house and make sure it looked nice for when my mom came home. And for whatever reason, my mom didn't catch on too quick that I was sloughing school. And then she got pregnant with my youngest brother. And so she ended up getting sick enough that she needed to get some special care. So she went to stay with my uncle for a little bit, and because so that his wife could help take care of her. And then
Okay.
it was really easy because I just stayed home the whole time. And when the school called, I'd say, yeah, she's staying home. So I didn't go back to school.
Mhm.
So when my mom finally caught on what was going on, so she was upset with me for not going to school. And she said, you're going to have to go to school because I'm not going to have any kids that don't have an education like I did. I want my kids to have an education.
Yeah.
So when my dad found out, he came to me and he said, well, I want to know why you're not going to school. So I told him why I didn't want to go to school. And he was so upset when he found out about the situation. He told me, you're not going back to school. I'm not putting one of my daughters in that situation again.
Yeah.
And so I was pulled out of school. And he said, we'll figure out how to get you to go through school, whether it's the private school or whether it's homeschool. So that's kind of how that went down.
Mhm. Okay. So you didn't ever end up going back to school, right?
No,
Is
I
there like this?
tried. I my mom tried for a little bit. My older sister was going to school that she was paying for a homeschool program, but we didn't have the money to pay for two of us to go, and she was already going. So we worked through trying to work through our private school to try to get me to go through school, but that didn't work out either. So no, I didn't go back to school. I wanted to. It wasn't that I didn't like school. I liked to learn, but it
So
just wasn't good.
what age would you say that you actually dropped out of school?
And I was in the 8th grade.
What age?
I don't know what age is 8th grade.
I don't know.
I
I'm
don't
putting
know.
a
Why are
bunch
you
of you
asking me when you don't even know?
in there. All right, we'll leave it to everybody else to decide. 8th grade age. So when you got your GED though, when did that happen?
That was after I was an adult and you were the baby.
Okay.
So
How old were you?
I was, geez, you have to ask me all these hard questions. I was probably at that point 27, I think, 28.
7. Okay. In 8th grade, you were probably like 14, 15 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
So my point behind all of that is that some people feel like they're behind in life because they're not achieving stuff, but you got your GED at 27, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So it's not ever too late to go do something and accomplish something and
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
something
It
of
was important
yourself.
to me. I really was. I looked at going back to schools even soon after I was married. I looked at going back into nursing school and different stuff like that. It just felt like I think I didn't take the opportunities that were there when I could have. So that was something that I think I was a little bit scared of it.
Yeah, understandable. And so when you dropped out of school and you were out of school, not doing anything knowingly from your parents at this point, what did you do with your time?
Um, when I dropped out of school, I was really involved in working. I found different jobs that I worked at, and I also helped a lot around the house with my mom's kids. So I pretty much took care of the house. My mom worked doing house cleaning, and
Mhm.
she took my older sister with her most of the time. And then as I got a little, a little bit here and there, I would go with her. I would go with my other mothers sometimes to do house cleaning jobs. So I didn't just sit home and watch TV. That wasn't it. But when I did stay home, I loved to put music on really loud. And it was rock and roll, let me tell you. Queen was it. I liked Queen a lot. I liked Bread a lot. There was several bands. I liked AC/DC and all that. So those weren't considered music that a young lady would listen to. So I kind of did that secretly.
Mhm.
So when nobody was home, I would turn the music up pretty loud and clean the house. And I had one incident where my other mom came downstairs, and she was very sweet. And she just said, "Honey, can you turn that music down? That is not the kind of music that'll keep the spirit of God in our home." And so I turned it off. I had respect for her. She was a good woman. So
Yeah. So how long after you dropped out did you start going to those girls' classes?
whew, um, I would say that that was, let's see, I was probably out of school for maybe 4 years, maybe, probably. Hard to say for sure.
Okay. So like pushing, that doesn't sound right because that puts you like pushing 20.
Well, I've always been horrible at dates.
Okay. So maybe like 2 years after you dropped out of school, maybe?
Um, say I dropped out of school, I would say when I was 13, 14. I would think that's how old I was.
Okay.
13, probably.
13.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I met your dad when I was 14. I do remember that, but I was out of school when I met your dad.
So you probably went to those girls' classes when you were 15.
Yeah, probably
And
15.
they only allowed people at 16, correct?
Right. Yeah, I went to those classes when I was 15.
Yeah, we're starting to tie some time frame down for you.
Yeah.
um, yeah. So do you feel like you're able to talk about those girls' classes at all? And what about those girls' classes really made you decide for yourself to proceed to go live polygamy?
In those classes, they just went through the scriptures. They talked about, Abraham and the law of Sarah and what you needed to live. They went through the Bible and why you would live polygamy.
Uh-huh.
And they went through the Doctrine and Covenants, and we talked about celestial marriage. They talked about Joseph Smith and how he was a polygamist, and Brigham Young. So it was basically a history lesson of this is how it all happened. It's all through the Bible. Jesus was a polygamist, and he was married to Mary, and and then he, you know, so they went through all that history through the Bible of all the people that were polygamists, and down to Joseph Smith's time, and how important it was, because living polygamy is what helps a man to be able to learn how to be just and fair, and it's to help women to learn to work together and to love each other and to be shared, because women have a tendency to be selfish.
Okay. So what was it for you out of those classes that what spoke to you that was like, okay, yeah, that's for me?
Um, I would think that for me in those classes, it really just came down to by the time realizing the history that it went through, really boiled back down to the history,
Okay.
and that if
Heritage.
that many people lived polygamy in history that were righteous men and people, then I needed to be willing to be one of those people that was willing to learn how to do that. Because
Yeah.
I did want to be a good person. I wanted to be that person that I could help other people. And how can you help people if you're not a good person? You can't.
Okay. So it sounds like you felt a lot of, as I would say, heritage in it
Yeah.
after those classes,
Yeah.
and spiritually connected, as that was what was spiritually needed of you in this life.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, I think that's quite a bit that we did cover this week. And I just want to let you know that I really do appreciate you being strong enough and brave enough to share your story with the world and with me, because I learned quite a bit more about myself and our family as we do these. And I'm sure that there's a lot that other people and everyone else is getting out of listening to these for themselves, maybe working through some of their own stuff. But yeah, it's been incredible so far, and I just wanted to say I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for helping me to be able to come out of my own shell and fighting against that it's okay to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on our next segment, it would be awesome to kind of keep it as chronological as possible and just dive right into what it was like dating while you were in the polygamous community, dating dad, stuff like that, and just continue on that path. And yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We could go through that. That's not a problem.
All right,
It'll be a little bit of a different love story than most people get.
cool. Yeah, it for sure will be. All right. Well, we will pick this back up next week. And as always, love you, Mom, and you look beautiful.
Love you too.
Bye.
One thing I will bring up is, because I feel like it's kind of part of my story, and that is I had a sister who is, well, she is one of the girls married to my husband, that we were really close. And I did bring that up in the last episode. And we used to sit in the car and talk about how we would get married, because we both wanted to have children.
Yeah.
So we would talk about, we got married, and then my husband or her husband went off to war and they got killed. So that way we could live in the same house and then raise our kids together. We didn't really ever talk. Sometimes we talked about marrying the same guy, but she liked different guys than I did.
Mhm.
And so I didn't, we didn't ever say we married the same guy.
Yeah.
We always made sure that whoever we married died, so they got out of the picture.
In these scenarios.
Yes. Oh, yes. We sat in the car all the time and we would talk about these scenarios, or somebody would drop a baby off on our doorstep, and then we got to have the baby. And, we came up with all kinds of scenarios. So we didn't have to be married.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.